Conversation. We're so excited to have Ivana, Janet, and Aaron to talk about clean beauty with us today. For anyone that is just joining, again, we are asking everyone to please mute themselves and turn off their videos for the duration of this conversation. We will have a Q&A portion at the end of the hour. So if you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat box. And we'll cover those in the order in which they're received, probably during the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. And, I'll, of course, share a reminder for that as we get closer towards the end of the hour. And with that, I will turn things over to Linda Reinstein, the president and co-founder of the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization.
Thank you, Courtney. So this is exciting. This is our fourth virtual event, and I am Linda Reinstein. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm the co-founder of ADAO and also a mesothelioma widow, and I am just delighted to welcome all of you today to our first clean and toxic-free beauty conversation. You're going to hear from three amazing leaders and influencers in the movement and how we can do more within our homes, our state, and the nation to ensure what we put on and in our bodies are free from toxins. I'm going to switch to a quick slide because it's always important in our world to say thank you. So I would like to first thank our participants. They're amazing, and I think you're all going to walk away with great knowledge. ADAO is a very small, independent nonprofit, and we do accept donations from a myriad of people, but want to thank our 2020 conference sponsors with the Platinum, the Simmons Hanley Conroy Firm, American Federation of Teachers, and Motley Rice. And our silver sponsor is Early Lucarelli, Sweetie and Meisenkoten, and Whites and Luxembourg. And bronze is the Heat and Frost Insulators and Omaze. Some of you may not have heard of Omaze before, but they are a fabulous organization are actually a company in Los Angeles, and they are dedicating a campaign to ADAO, which is really exciting. So not only are we raising awareness, but they're running a campaign that benefits ADAO right now, where your donation gives you a chance to win a week in Hawaii, which is pretty cool. And you can use it well after, God willing, the whole coronavirus is obviously we're done with that in a big way. So let's talk about clean beauty. What does it actually mean to our health? So what's most surprising when Alan got sick, and to many others that I meet, is many people really think that their cosmetics, their food, their air, their water is free of contaminants, and that is untrue. So let's back up for just a second. This has been a wow week, and the ladies on this call, on this conversation, know all about it. 4 years ago, the Lautenberg Chemical Safety Act was signed into law, and it was to amend the 1976 Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, which was signed into law. It was so weak and just didn't do the job that the EPA actually couldn't regulate asbestos. So presently, asbestos has not been banned. Imports use continue. And there are over 70 other countries who have banned asbestos. So clearly the United States is leading the race to the bottom, as I frequently say. Each year, this is very personal to me and to many on this call, each year 40,000 Americans die from preventable asbestos-caused diseases. And that's not just the only law that we're going to talk about today. So when our parents and our grandparents were listening to Bing Crosby and Ella Fitzgerald on the radio, some millennials might have to Google those names, the FDA Food and Drug Cosmetic Act was signed into law. Now, at that time, it was a significant law, but 82 years later, let me tell you, it is dangerously out of date and unprotected. And we're going to talk about that today. Now, you're going to hear from our experts of what you can do to keep yourself and your loved ones safe from toxic chemicals like asbestos in cosmetics. How can you ensure that everything you put on your body is safe? And we're also going to talk about how you can make good choices with your dollars and also with your voice, which is really important. So just so you know that we've been working around the clock for 16 years on prevention and policy. And I'm really grateful to have the best breast cancer prevention partners and Beauty Counter support our bill currently in the House and Senate, the Alan Reinstein Banned Asbestos Now Act. The acronym is RBAN. And the bill has been championed and actually passed out of the House Energy and Commerce Committee with a vote of 47-1. And what does that mean? It means that it has significant bipartisan support. So with all that behind us now, let's get started. I'd like to ask all three of our panelists to please share a little bit about yourself before we start the conversation. And we're going to begin with Janet.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate today on the 82nd birthday of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. My name is Janet Noodleman. I'm the Director of Program and Policy at Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, and I am also the Director of our Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. And we are the only national breast cancer organization focused solely on preventing the disease by identifying and eliminating chemicals that are linked to increased rates of breast cancer around the country.
Thank you, Janet. Ivana, tell us about yourself.
Hey everyone, want to echo Janet and thank you, Linda, for this opportunity to talk about all things clean beauty. My name is Ivana Yang and I'm the Director of Advocacy at Beauty Counter. Some of you may know Beauty Counter already, but we are the clean beauty leaders. And our mission since day one has been to get safer products into the hands of everyone. We do that through our safer products, through education, through our community of consultants, and through our advocacy initiatives.
Excellent.
Later.
Thank you, Ivana. Erin, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Erin Watson. Thank you first so much for having me, Linda. It is quite the honor to be on this panel with ADAO, with Beauty Counter, and with Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. You guys, I'm so in awe of what you all are doing. I'm a mom of an 8-year-old girl. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a sister-in-law. I'm an athlete. I'm a native of Charleston, South Carolina. And in the summer of 2015, at 35, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I look forward to sharing a little bit more about my journey.
Thank you, Erin, for being brave enough to come on to share your journey. It makes all of our collective work mean even more. Let's start, Janet, with you. Tell us a little bit about your role with Breast Cancer Prevention Partners and also the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I direct all of the program and policy activities at BCPP. I've worked for the organization for 18 years. And we do our work in 3 different ways. We're focused on raising public awareness about the relationship between chemical exposures and increased risk of breast cancer. We're focused on passing laws that better strengthen the regulation of cancer-causing chemicals in consumer products, in workplace settings, in communities. And we also run market-based campaigns like the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, which are focused on trying to get the big multinational cosmetics companies to take more responsibility for the safety of the ingredients in their products, as well as lifting up the clean cosmetics industry, the real leaders that are raising the bar for the industry writ large, and moving the $100 billion cosmetics industry toward safer products and production.
Yeah, you guys have really been at the helm for a long time. So what really motivated Jeannie and the founders of, it was called Breast Cancer Prevention Fund, I think before, what was the big motivator 15 years ago?
So, Breast Cancer Fund, which was our old name, we changed our name about 3 years ago, was one of the co-founders of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, along with a number of other leading women's health, and environmental justice organizations. For example, Clean Water Action, Healthcare Without Harm, Women's Voices for the Earth, Black Women for Justice. And so a number of us got together and we were really focused on trying to secure better and stronger regulation of chemicals in commerce. There's 80,000 chemicals in commerce, as you know, that are literally in everything we use every day, consumer products, building materials, the list just goes on, and very few of them have been tested for their impacts on human health. And you know, a number of years ago, your organization, our organization, a lot of environmental health groups focused on securing stricter chemical policy reform here in the US, but that reform only focused on chemicals regulated by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. There are over 10,000 chemicals that are used to formulate the beauty and personal care products we use every day, and they're regulated by the FDA, the Federal Food and Drug Administration. And those two agencies don't talk to each other. You know, it's amazing but true. So we wanted to really dig into FDA regulation of the safety of ingredients in cosmetics, because in 2004, when we founded the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, something really important happened. And that is that the EU adopted the EU Cosmetics Directive, which banned over 1,100 chemicals from cosmetics. Today, that number is 1,400 chemicals that are banned. When we looked at the FDA regulation of chemicals in cosmetics, we saw that only 11 chemicals had ever been restricted or banned from cosmetics here. And we said, you know, what's the deal? You know, clearly, cosmetics aren't that different in the EU versus the US. You know, there's a bigger problem afoot. And the bigger problem was clearly the power of the chemical industry here in the United States, as well as the trade associations, and the real lockdown that they had implemented on the movement of any kind of strengthened chemical regulation from going forward. So we decided we were going to organize women, because women are the primary consumers, not just of cosmetics, but of consumer products in their households. You know, women have the power and the energy and the vision to make change. And we thought by bringing them into the conversation through the lens of cosmetic safety, that we could implement much broader chemical policy reform here in the US, not just for cosmetics, but again, for chemicals and commerce writ large.
And that's a great story that you tell. It was probably about 7 years ago, I'm guessing, when Jeannie, the founder of Breast Cancer Fund, actually helped to organize an editorial board meeting at the San Francisco Chronicle, and ADO was part of that with some others. And it was through our collective activism that we were able to work on TSCA together with Nancy Rumeyer and others. So it doesn't matter about where your cancer may be in the collective activism place, because whether it's breast or lung, we all work together to fight for clean air, safe cosmetics, obviously, and other issues. So in your work, and I know that you shared this morning that you're a mom. So in your work, it must be very interesting to see the change in the past 15 years. What are you seeing from the so-called average mom? And none of us moms are average, but do you see a change in what women are thinking and feeling about clean cosmetics and air, and where we are in mobilizing our women?
You know, absolutely. I'm a mother of a 10-year-old girl, and when I became a mother, it's like the world emerged, almost like, you know, in the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy saw the Emerald City, in a completely different way. All of a sudden, I wasn't just worried about my health, but I was thinking about the health of my child, her current health, and her future health. And you know, it just really changed things for me. And I looked around and I saw that millions of moms were thinking about the same thing as me and concerned about the same issue. And that was, how do we prevent our kids, our daughters, our sons from being exposed to chemicals that could predispose them to an increased risk of breast cancer later in life and other diseases, that could increase the risk of asthma? How do we help pregnant moms not, again, predispose their baby boys from an increased risk of diseases that in fact could increase their risk of prostate cancer and other diseases as well? You know, the environmental health and justice movement is based on the belief that the increased introduction of chemicals in commerce is directly linked to the increased rates of cancer, of asthma, of infertility, of reproductive and developmental harm that we're seeing all around us in society. So yeah, moms care about this issue, but dads do too, because they're, also experiencing adverse health effects because of the chemicals and the consumer products they use. Kids are starting to organize around this issue because they don't think it's right or fair that corporations can use chemicals linked to cancer and other disease with impunity without taking responsibility or accountability for the safety of the ingredients and the products they sell and profit from. So we're seeing a major tidal wave of change in the US because of these concerns.
I have to confess, I love girl power, and I have been seeing this emerge strongly. My own daughter Emily is 27, and I tell you, with all of the civil rights, anti-racism movements, it has been really important to see how the millennials have taken charge. And I feel we're doing a great job as moms to bring these issues to the millennials, and because we have some cleaning up to do, I would say. So I want to spend the last bit of our time talking about some of the really strong accomplishments that breast cancer prevention partners and Campaign for Safe Cosmetics have accomplished. So share with our listeners, because this group is actually international. So you have people from South America and England and all throughout the United States. Tell us a little bit about AB 2762 and why is that bill important?
Great, thank you, Linda. So AB 2762 is a piece of California legislation. It's called the Toxic-Free Cosmetic Act that was sponsored by my organization, Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, Environmental Working Group, Black Women for Wellness, and the California Public Interest Research Group. It would ban a dozen of the worst, the most toxic chemicals on the planet from beauty and personal care products sold in California. 10 of these chemicals are directly linked to breast cancer. 9 of the chemicals are linked to an increased susceptibility to COVID. And all of the chemicals are already banned by the European Union from cosmetics sold there. So it's an important bill because it takes the kind of leadership that we've quite honestly been hoping that the FDA would take, but hasn't. And the other thing that's really amazing about this bill is it just passed the California Assembly by a unanimous bipartisan vote, proving that cosmetics don't discriminate against people based on party affiliation. We're all vulnerable to toxic chemicals in the beauty and personal care products we use every day, and the bipartisan vote really showed that. I want to mention, you might be wondering, well, why California? As the 5th largest economy in the world, when we pass a law here, it serves as a de facto law of the land. And not just Californians benefit, but everyone benefits from the stricter ingredient disclosure and the bans on toxic chemicals and cosmetics that we enact here in California, because companies aren't going to just reformulate their products for California. When they change their products for sale here, they change them for sale and protect everyone everywhere.
Yeah, and I think what your distinction between the jurisdiction, I think Ivana, I could take that up on her conversation about the jurisdictional differences between EPA and FDA is really something that we should dive into a little bit later on. Hats off, I think we should throw some props out to the sponsors of the bill, because Al Martucci is my assembly person. Do you want to tell who your big leaders were in Sacramento?
So as you mentioned, the author of the bill was Al Martucci, and then 2 other members joined as co-authors of the bill, Buffy Wicks, who's from my hometown of Oakland, and then also Assembly Member Quirk. So, it's an important bill. It's really historic in terms of what it's attempting to do, and it's kind of a no-brainer because these are chemicals like mercury, 4 types of formaldehyde, 2 phenylenediamines that appear in hair dye. And recently there was an NIEHS study that showed that Black women who regularly dye their hair experience a 60% increased risk of breast cancer. So getting those chemicals out of hair dye matters. Parabens, phthalates, and even these perfluorinated forever chemicals that are getting a lot of attention these days because they're contaminating the waterways of communities across the country. They're the chemicals that show up in no-stick Teflon pans.
Yeah, all really important. Janet, thank you. We're going to circle back to you towards the end about how people can help you and the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners and Course Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. Ivana, let's switch to you now, because Beauty Counter is such a unique brand, but you're more than a brand, you are a movement. And in full disclosure, when Lindsay watches this, we worked together at Safer Chemicals Healthy Family when she said she was leaving and she was going to go work at Beauty Counter. I'm like, what is that? What did they do? I'm thinking, why would Lindsay go out to California? Well, I know now why Lindsay went to California and works for a Beauty Counter. And you guys have an amazing movement. So share a little bit about Beauty Counter, the why and the when, because I know Greg has an amazing voice. Share a little bit about Beauty Counter, please.
Sure. So thank you so much for those kind words, Linda. So for those of you who don't know, Beauty Counter was founded in 2013 by our CEO, Greg Renfrew, when she couldn't find products in the market that were both safer and effective. Back in 2013, there were either the, really luxury brands that performed really well but had very, very questionable ingredients, or there were kind of like the crunchy granola brands that might have been good for you, but didn't really give us the performance that we're used to in our traditional personal care products. And so she set out to create the safest products on the market. And as both you and Janet mentioned, back then, and it's still the case today, the US bans just 30 ingredients from personal care products. And there are now 80,000 ingredients used in commerce on consumer products. And so when she set out to create these products, she wanted to eliminate all these ingredients like parabens, phthalates, formaldehyde that we knew were bad for our health, either were carcinogenic or cause hormone disruption, cause allergies, a host of negative health consequences. And so today we have our Never list, which is our list of over 1,800 ingredients that we pledge never to formulate with. And I should say that Beauty Counter, like you mentioned, is a movement. And we are able to be a movement because of our business model. In fact, our largest sales channel is through our network of over 50,000 consultants all across North America, both here in the US and in Canada. And many of these consultants join the company not only because for the business opportunity, but also because they are so passionate about cosmetic reform. Today marks the 82nd anniversary of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. It's been 82 years since Congress last passed a law, updating our laws governing these products that we use every single day. We think that is far too long, and that's a key part of our movement to get safer products into the hands of everyone. We know not everyone's going to purchase Beauty Counter products, and advocacy is really a way to make sure that regardless of where a person shops, drugstore, department store, with Beauty Counter or not, that you can walk into a store or click on a website and know those products are safe. Unfortunately, that's just not the case today.
No, but hats off to Beauty Counter, because I think even the green seal on cosmetics now and beauty products where it says clean, verified, like for EWG, and I know Sephora is very big on promoting clean cosmetics. It gives us a quick recognition of what we might want to take a look at a different brand and make a different consumer choice, which is really important. So let's talk about you, because I think Beauty Counter for me is remarkably interesting and very unusual. I confess I became a consultant a few months ago. My daughter Emily was like, why, Mom? And the reality is the why, Mom, for me is I wanted to understand more about your cosmetics and about your movement. And I know that through my conversation with my daughter, it is really abundantly clear that it takes both prevention and policy to make us all safer. And it's great you have a brand. So as a lawyer, you did share that you're a lawyer. It's a lot of people are only familiar with problems when they watch the 11 o'clock news, possibly about a lawsuit. So as a lawyer looking into advocacy, what insights have you been able to glean? How does Beauty Counter make their movement so remarkably different? It's very exciting to me, so well done.
Thank you. So I am a lawyer, never practiced though. My previous life was working in trade associations in DC. And so I think the biggest difference for me coming to a company, especially a company that is so unique like Beauty Counter with our consultant model, is that we have a built-in grassroots network. What I've learned through my years of lobbying is that members of Congress, sure, they'll take meetings with lobbyists like myself, but what they really care about is what their constituents think, because they're going to be the ones voting them in or out of office at the end of the day. And we are very, very fortunate at Beauty Counter to have our network of really passionate consultants who are so eager to use their voices to advocate for change in our cosmetics regulatory landscape. And so we have initiatives every single year for them to use their voices. So whether that be our biannual trips to Washington, D.C., where we bring 100 of our consultants from all over the U.S. to meet with their lawmakers in person and tell their personal stories of why this issue is important to them, to our annual district meetings, where we invite all of our consultants across North America to meet with their members of Congress, members of Parliament back in their home districts or home ridings. And this year, unfortunately, of course, due to the COVID pandemic, we had to cancel those meetings, but we're still able to engage through virtual town halls, through briefings, and through online advocacy.
Yeah, it's terrific. I know one of your taglines, or maybe it was in your bio, that the beauty counter is about disrupting the beauty industry. And we fight I don't know if you're a registered lobbyist or if you were, but the reality is, and I am not a registered lobbyist, and we have many educational discussions with members of Congress and do staff briefings. But for us, there is a disconnect between knowledge and policy, and staffers have an inordinate amount of issues that they have to become professional and spun up. And I tell you, when I go to Washington and start talking about asbestos, especially after there's a new election, asbestos, you can't see it, touch it, taste it, smell it. Same with many other chemicals in cosmetics. Staffers have a huge responsibility for understanding. And we, as a small organization, ADO, not like Beauty Counter or Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, but it's very hard to compete in the David and Goliath battle, because the American Chemistry Council has a whole lot of and glossy, and so does other industries. And it is an unfair war, but there's no crying in baseball. So collective activism is so important. When you say you like to disrupt the beauty industry, are you seeing that some of the trade associations take clean beauty more seriously than they did like a couple years ago? Or are they just fighting harder?
I really think business people are smart. We all know who the large global cosmetics companies are, and they're seeing that consumers are voting with their wallets. They're seeing that consumers are demanding more transparency on the labels, demanding products that reveal, what the fragrance contains and the personal care products, because so many of us have fragrance allergies. They want companies to use ingredients that are going to be safe. And because of them, companies themselves are changing their practices. Like Janet mentions, the beauty industry is a $100 billion industry. And previously, the clean beauty companies like Beauty Counter were the Davids against these Goliaths. But more and more, we're finding that every year we see dozens of these cleaner beauty companies emerge. And we are the fastest growing category within the larger beauty industry overall. And lawmakers are really heeding our voices. I mean, case in point, last December was the second hearing held in 40 years on the House side, looking at our cosmetic regulatory system and whether it needs an update. And Greg Renfrew, our founder and CEO, was the first and only clean beauty CEO that was invited to testify at that hearing. So our voices, while it may still be just a few, are very powerful. And that's really a testament to our network of consultants who have made their voices heard, to their lawmakers who are now waking up to this issue.
Yeah, you've done great work. Let's throw a shout out to Chairman Pallone. He is the sponsor of the Cosmetic Safety Enhancement Act of 2019. He's also the lead champion of the Alan Reinstein Ban Asbestos Now Act. So Chairman Pallone, coming from New Jersey, could have a lot of industry pressure like J&J, but I have to say, Chairman Pallone, the whole Energy and Commerce Committee have stood up and said no to the industry with these strong bills. Share a little bit about Chairman Pallone's new bill, the Cosmetic Safety Enhancement Act.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Linda, Chairman Pallone has been such a big champion of cosmetic safety for many years now. And when he assumed chairmanship, he wanted to finally have his bill be introduced and be taken up by the committee, which it was this last March. I think it was the last markup that the committee took before they went out due to the COVID pandemic. And the bill moved past the subcommittee, and now it's waiting for the full Energy and Commerce Committee to review it. So the Cosmetic Safety Enhancement Act would be the first major law passed on cosmetics since 1938. And it would do a couple of things. So it will allow FDA to recall products that harm consumers. A lot of people are really surprised to learn that FDA does not have that ability now, but they do not. It would allow FDA to start reviewing ingredients. So I believe it's 5 ingredients at the outset. And then every year the agency would review a few more. We have long ways to go to catch up to the EU, which bans over 1,400 ingredients, or even Canada, which bans over 600 ingredients, but 5 ingredients per year is a good start. And it would allow companies to register with the FDA. Because right now the cosmetics industry is really self-regulated. And when that happens, we just don't have the transparency that we need to into what the companies are doing, what is in their products. And so it does a whole host of other things too, but it's a great start to start reforming our cosmetics regulatory system. And Chairman Pallone has been really active in working with other members of his committee and even office committee who have an interest in cosmetics. So I know Janet and BCPP have worked very closely with Congresswoman Schakowsky on her great cosmetic reform bill. And components of that are being considered as amendments to Chairman Pallone's bill. There's also another bill out there, the Natural Cosmetics Act, introduced by Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, which would define what the word natural means for the very first time. I know that they're considering aspects of that bill. And Congresswoman Debbie Dingell has a bill that would ban asbestos in children's products, which is such a no-brainer. You think, why does there need to be a bill to do that? But unfortunately, there needs to be one. And all these members of Congress are, I think, working together to get the strongest consumer protective bill possible passed through the House.
Yeah, it's great to have such champions, and we're going to circle back with how people can help you with Beauty Counter. So, Erin, we're going to switch to you now, and you are such a brave and fabulous woman to share your story about breast cancer. So, would you share a little bit about what it was like in 2015 and what you heard and what kind of treatment you had to pursue?
Sure, I'm happy to. So it was the summer of 2015, and I found it. I mean, very luckily, you do your breast exams and pay attention to all the different types of ways it can show up. Of course, it was shocking, and you don't want to think that that's what it could be. I went and saw my OB, and she said, let's keep an eye on it. I think it's a cyst, let's keep an eye on it. And so fast forward to December 2015, it had not gone away, it had hardened. And I'll take a moment there just to say, I think the biggest lesson in my journey is that I try to tell everyone, be your own advocate, be your own health advocate, push for whatever you think is right. So in December 2015, I went and had my very first mammogram at 35. Right after that, they fast forwarded me to a quick ultrasound, and I biopsied the very next day, which very quickly they figured out that Monday was cancer. It had calcified. I had great doctors. There's so many great doctors caring for women and men going through breast cancers. And they saw me that afternoon and very quickly formed a collaborative effort to find the right treatment for me. My cancer is estrogen and progesterone receptor positive. So that means my hormones are fueling my cancer. Luckily, I was stage 1. and had not spread into my lymph nodes. So that was a huge blessing. So we decided very quickly that I was going to have surgery first. As with any health issue of yourself or your loved one, obviously it was very stressful, very hard. The first thing my doctor said to me is, you're going to be infertile after this. And we had already faced infertility, Janet. So that was hard to even hear that while I was fine before our infertility treatments, now I wouldn't be. So we fast tracked to what I chose to do was a double mastectomy. I did not have any pride in my boobs, so I said, just take them. And it was on my daughter's birthday, so that's an extra special day now. From there, we were hoping not to have to do chemo, but unfortunately, research shows that a tumor over 1 centimeter should have chemo. So we did 4 treatments. I did my chemo. It sucked. It sucks. But I came out of it stronger. I came out with a really cute pixie I never would have had. And a new attitude about life. And today I am very, very close to 5 years this December. And I'm on 2 hormone suppressant drugs, a monthly shot and a daily drug. And again, looking forward to my 5 years in December.
Well, those are tough stories. I remember your daughter was so little and you did it like a courageous warrior. So I was applauding you in hugs and not just virtually, but also in person. And full disclosure, Erin has been a very strong ban asbestos voice and supporter. So she understands, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but prevention is the cure for many of these diseases. And what if we could throw our hands up and say, we can cure mesothelioma. We just have to stop asbestos exposure. So we're getting closer to being able to say that. So somebody just wrote, love you, Erin, so proud of you. That makes me cry. So, okay, so I have to kind of like get centered again. So let's talk a little bit about you. You found out you had breast cancer. Like when I found out Alan had mesothelioma, my first reaction was I was angry and I felt very uneducated. When you found out that you had breast cancer, I'm sure you went through your treatment search, but you landed on Beauty Counter. I want to hear about your journey to find clean and toxic-free beauty cosmetics and why Beauty Counter fits that space.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. I mean, the first reaction was, why me? I had never even been in the hospital except to have my daughter. So I'd never had any other health issue that we knew of. And I was an athlete and super active and seemed to do all the things that you're supposed to do. Of course, then we get through that and you're like, okay, we got to focus on this. We got to focus on what we can control. And that's right. So I started thinking, what can I be doing as I'm educating and I'm learning more? How can I be helping others? Because very quickly, I also saw that as soon as people knew that I was going through cancer treatment or had just gone through treatment, they would refer people to me. So we created this community starts, just like with ADAO. It's a family and everyone supports one another. And that was amazing. And so it was rewarding to be able to start to do that for people and to be able to tell them, you're going to get through this. You're going to beat this. And guess what? It is preventable. So as I had started hearing about Beauty Counter and the clean beauty movement and, didn't know a lot about it, did not know what the never list was and that EU had banned 1,400 chemicals already. A good friend in the neighborhood had a social which is what we like to do is spread the word in Beauty Counter. I think I want to make it clear. I am a Beauty Counter consultant, but I am a breast cancer survivor too. So she invited me to one and I knew nothing. And we had another colleague of ours, Wynn Sisk, came in and spoke and shared the mission about clean. And it became very obvious to me that I needed to at least start using some of these products and be learning more. So fast forward, I bought a whole line and basically started throwing everything away in my house. We try to tell people like, just start reading labels. Just look at the, never list. You got to educate yourself, especially because these chemicals are called so many different names and it's very confusing until you start to educate yourself and know that, oh, that is actually formaldehyde, or that is actually this hormone disruptor. And so I started that education, and my friend, again, who had that same social, came to me and said, hey, have you thought about this? You really should think about this because you're talking about it anyway. And so unbeknownst to her, I had already decided. And so actually I was going to call you very soon. So here we are. That is almost 4 years ago. I've been advocating for clean beauty. And, a big part of why I joined Beauty Counter too is because of them being a B Corp and already have been involved with the breast cancer prevention partners. That spoke to me, and EWG, that spoke to me so strongly. I never thought I would be involved in anything like this. I never thought I'd be a breast cancer survivor. But when we've got groups like this, like ADAO, bridging the gap from people who are dealing with asbestos and terrible, terrible cancers to the clean beauty movement and helping to prevent those kinds of cancers, it spoke to me, and it felt such a powerful way to be able to give back and make something good out of my health challenge.
And you have. And it's similar to, I think, what fuels ADAO. It's from our personal grief and tragedies that we can recognize that possibly through our storytelling that we can make change happen. Because the worst thing would be to not do anything, and heaven forbid your daughter become ill, or my daughter Emily suffer from mesothelioma, then I would have done nothing, and we would feel like we have perpetrated this and continued it. So hats off to you, Erin. There are a few journalists on. We're going to watch for some chats. I don't want to miss this opportunity to circle back. I mean, we know ADO is very clear. We're working to move our Alan Reinstein bill to the floor. It's HR 1603, and Chairman Pallone and his team has done a great job. But I know our three panelists also have legislation you'd probably like to share. So briefly, what would be the action item, Janet? I'm in the process, Nicole and I are going to finish a wrap-up blog, so we'll be able to put more information like your text to beauty on it. But if you're going to give one single sentence, your soundbite, what's the action item you want these listeners to focus on, Janet? What can they do for you and for breast cancer prevention partners and campaign for safe cosmetics?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit when I answer this question. I'll say the one thing they can do is to go to our action center on our website at bcpp.org and take 3 actions. And the first would be to, if they live in California, to write to their senator and ask them to support the Toxic-Free Cosmetic Act, AB 2762, which I mentioned earlier. The second would be to write to their assembly member and ask them to support Senate Bill 312, which is the Fragrance and Flavor Ingredient Right to Know Act. And that's a bill that would force the disclosure of the secret fragrance and flavor ingredients in the personal care products that we use every day. And this bill is really important because while manufacturers have to disclose all of the ingredients in their products, a federal labeling loophole protects them from disclosing the ingredients in fragrance and flavor. And most of our personal care products smell good because they contain the secret flavoring ingredients, many of which are linked to harm to both human health and the environment. And then the third thing they can do is to...
I think Janet cut out briefly, but okay, so she's going to come back to the third thing, and we're going to make sure we put that in the wrap up. So Ivana, from this group that's sitting here, what would you like to tell them about today's launch of the campaign, because it's so strong and positive? How can people help you and Beauty Counter advance your mission?
I would say the easiest way to join our mission is to use our text action. So to support the Pallone bill, just text Better Beauty to 52886. And I know you're going to send this out in your blog as well, Linda. But just send that text action, and we have an email ready to go to send to your members of Congress, asking them to support this important bill. And the bill that Janet mentioned, the California bill, Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act, we have a text action for that as well. So that's Toxic-Free, all one word, to 52886. And that sends an email to your California Assembly members and senators. So of course, again, that second text action is just for the California residents who are on the call today.
So 2 separate text numbers, great actions. We'll make sure they're in our wrap up, and hats off to Beauty Counter for doing that. So Erin, you're my star. So asbestos is a killer, and we know other things are. So what do you want to push legislatively? What do you want people to know?
Yeah. So first of all, again, Linda, thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for making it happen. And thank you. I know this was a first for you, from bridging to the amazing work you do with national and international researchers and experts and survivors and their families, and spreading the word too about clean beauty. It really means a lot. You do such amazing work. One thing I want everyone on this call to know is that ADAO is the organization advocating for people who are affected by asbestos-related diseases. Asbestos is still, and to know that asbestos is still in our world. It is being used in Claire's beauty products. It is in buildings that exist and are being torn down. It is a lot of places that it just shouldn't be. So thank you, Linda. And I know you have a small team, but it is very mighty. So go learn more about ADAO, follow them, engage with them, and learn about the Alan Reinstein banned asbestos bill. Of course, Beauty Counter, text today, talk to your representatives. I would be remiss if I didn't share my Beauty Counter. This is our activist t-shirt, Give 'em Lip. And I've got my Beauty Counter red on, which is our advocacy red color. I think just overall, we got to give people lip. We got to keep talking about this. We got to keep spreading the word and tell everyone that we know that it can be prevented and we can do better. So thank you again, Linda.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to have to write Lindsay and ask for my Give 'em Lip t-shirt.
Yeah, you need one.
I got the red on. I don't have the t-shirt to go with it. So we're looking at this, and what I'm seeing coming in by way of private chats is there are a lot of people here that are very educated, but there are some that find this shocking. And I think there's still such confusion with the FDA and the EPA jurisdiction. Like our Alan Reinstein Ban Asbestos Now Act is for the EPA. It will not regulate cosmetics, but we can all work together, and FDA won't regulate a kid's toy necessarily. So Ivana, can you touch on a little bit about the jurisdictional issues and how it is so important to have our government possibly break out of the silos, or what you're doing, and speak to both FDA and EPA? Because those are tough silos to break down and for people to better understand.
Sure. So the EPA regulates the chemicals, ingredients in your cleaning products, for example, while the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has jurisdiction over personal care products. And there's both pre-market and post-market products, or OTC products. So for example, like any product that is considered to be active, like an acne treatment, or product with retinol for age enhancement, those products have to go through OTC approval, and they are currently reviewed by FDA. But your shampoos, your conditioners, lipstick, blushes, body lotion, these items that we all use every single day, perfumes that could contain hundreds of different ingredients, are not required to be reviewed by FDA before they go on the market. So it's the companies themselves who are doing the tests and determining whether or not they're safe. And so really backstop today are the companies. So we really are asking Congress to empower the FDA to do more of the regulatory work needed, because they are a nonpartisan body. And that way, when they do the research, it can be made available to all companies, so that even the smaller companies who may not have the funding to have a research arm can also benefit from research that the FDA is doing on these ingredients.
Yeah, very fair. And the right to know has been important to ADIO. We are still fighting, and in our ban bill, there is the right to know where chemical companies will have to report to the EPA like they did in the late 80s and say, yes, we've imported asbestos, this is where we're using it, and we as consumers should have the right to know, is it in tape, is it in toys? But if we don't have the right to know, we fight so hard for prevention. And I think it was Aaron, or maybe you had mentioned the different chemicals. The names are very baffling. And just chrysotile asbestos can be listed just chrysotile, then the person doesn't connect it to asbestos. So labeling and naming the chemicals is really hard. I mean, if you had to sit there and read the average person the chemicals, most people couldn't pronounce them, wouldn't be able to identify them. Let's throw a shout out to resources. My dear friends at EWG, I love them. Ken Cook does an amazing job. Love their sunscreens. They recently did a pop-up in Venice, and Colin was there, and they just rock it with a lot of clean beauty. So that is sort of my personal resource. I love EWG's research and how they brand it. So Ivana and Aaron, what are your resources for clean beauty and safe consumer products?
Well, Beauty Counter, of course. The Never List. Go to the Never List. I'm really excited that more and more companies are paying attention. So EWG is my go-to source. Just yesterday, a friend was posting on Facebook about sunscreen and not realizing that there's a chemical in it that kids should not be breathing in. And I was shocked that I sent her the link to the Beauty Counter Never List and to the sunscreen, and I said, and to EWG, and I said, hey, here's just some information. Let me know if you have any questions. And she was so, so grateful. So those resources are my top ones.
Ivana, what about you?
I would echo that. I think Beauty Counter, we have a blog as well, which is a great resource if you want to read more about everything that we're doing legislatively. That blog is updated. Also, our testing. So we test every single ingredient against 23 health and safety endpoints. So if you want to see why don't we use this ingredient, or what is our stance on heavy metals, that blog is a really good resource.
Excellent. So I see us putting together a resource page after this conversation. Aaron, I'm going to look to you for a little help. And we'll make sure that we have all of these resources and touch points and action items, so it's very easy for quick moms and women to figure out what we need to do. Janet, you're back. We're happy. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It stinks, you know. Sometimes we have better reception when we're on a safari in Africa. However, let's take it from the top. I was just asking Ivana and also Aaron, what is their favorite resource? I confess that EWG's sunscreens and their lists really helped me in my consumer shopping and educating myself. And also, I should say, my daughter, who is 27, Emily, helps me to educate me because I can't keep track. But I guess all of you folks are on Instagram and have recs and different things. So I think look to our millennials also for a little educating. What are your best resources, Janet?
So I apologize. The internet kicked me off of this Zoom call here, and then I was waiting in the waiting room. Modern technology. So let's see. My favorite resource would be our website. I'm sorry, I'm a little biased. Safecosmetics.org, and that's the website of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. And there you can find tips for chemicals of concern to avoid in beauty and personal care products. It's organized by category, so you can search by nail products, by products of concern to pregnant women, hair care, makeup, etc. You can also find actions that you can take. You can find information about state and federal cosmetic safety regulation. And you can find information about the latest news articles, things like that. So it's a great one-stop shopping resource.
Excellent. So I don't want to stop with cosmetics. I want people to also think about consumer safety. So I'm hoping that everyone will continue our shared mission of a world without toxins in consumer products and cosmetics. I really think you as panelists have done a remarkable job sharing your knowledge, but also how our collective activism can make the world a safer and better place. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank the three of you and look forward to putting out a wrap-up email to our participants so they too can draft off of your great work. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to the email and also celebrating the 82nd anniversary of the FDA, Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Law. And let's see if we can shake this up in Washington and move on. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Linda.
for your
Thank you.
leadership,
Thanks,
Linda.
everybody.
Thanks so much.
Ciao, ciao.